Some places are not shaped to keep you alive. There are locations on Earth where the ground beneath your feet is actively hostile, where the air you breathe carries poison, where the water will dissolve your skin, where a single wrong step means you are not coming back. These are not disaster zones or war sites. These are natural features of our planet, environments that evolved without humans in mind, ecosystems that kill as a matter of geological fact. Drop a comment right now telling us which place you have heard of before watching this video, and which one surprised you most by the end. We want to see how many people knew what was waiting at number 1. Because the place at number 1 has killed more people than any natural disaster in recorded history, and it is still killing people today. This is the countdown from 10 to 1. The places where the ground itself is trying to kill you. Number 10. The Afar Depression, Danakil Desert, Ethiopia. Stand in the Afar Depression and you are standing 125 meters below sea level in one of the hottest places on Earth. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. The ground here is not solid, it shifts. Beneath your feet, the African continental plate is tearing itself apart in real time, splitting along the East African Rift. In a few million years, this will be ocean floor. Right now, it is a slow-motion catastrophe you can walk across. The air smells like sulfur. That is because the ground is leaking volcanic gases. Hydrothermal vents crack open the crust and release hydrogen sulfide, chlorine, sulfur dioxide. Breathe too deeply near the wrong fissure and your lungs burn. Stay too long and heat exhaustion becomes heatstroke, becomes organ failure. The Dalal geothermal field, located within the depression, holds the record for the highest average annual temperature ever recorded by a weather station, 34.4 degrees Celsius. Not summer highs, annual average. There are pools of water here that look like they belong on another planet. Brilliant yellows, deep greens, rust reds, do not touch them. The pH levels range from negative values to highly acidic. Some pools are hot enough to boil. Others are saturated with salt and heavy metals. There is no plant life, no animals. Microbial life exists in some pools, extremophiles adapted to conditions that would sterilize most ecosystems, but even they are sparse. Researchers from the University of Padua tested samples and found that some pools are simply too toxic, too hot, and too acidic for any known organism to survive. Tourists visit with armed guards not because of people, but because the region is so remote and unforgiving that rescue is not guaranteed. Dehydration happens faster than you expect. At least in the Afar Depression, you can see what is trying to kill you. The next place hides it under your feet. Number 9. The Cave of Crystals, Naka Mine, Chihuahua, Mexico. In the year 2000, miners drilling 300 meters below the surface of the Naka Mine broke through into a cavern no human had ever seen. Inside were crystals of selenite, a form of gypsum, some measuring over 11 meters long and weighing 55 tons. They are the largest natural crystals ever discovered. The cavern is extraordinary. It is also uninhabitable. The air temperature inside hovers around 58 degrees Celsius. Humidity sits near 100%. The combination is immediately lethal. Human beings cannot thermoregulate in those conditions. Your body cannot cool itself through sweat because the air is already saturated. Core temperature rises. Without protection, you have roughly 10 minutes before heat exhaustion forces you out. 20 minutes and you risk losing consciousness. Researchers who have entered wear cooling suits packed with ice and carry respirators. Even with full gear, time inside is limited to under an hour. The crystals grew because the cave sits above a magma chamber that kept the cavern flooded with mineral-rich water at around 58 degrees Celsius for over 500,000 years. When mining operations pumped out the water, the cavern was exposed. It has remained too hot to explore safely. Scientists from the University of Granada have studied the site and confirmed that without active cooling systems, prolonged human presence is impossible. The cave has been reflooded to preserve the crystals. No one is inside anymore. The next place is cold, not hot, but it will kill you just as efficiently. Number 8. The Danakil Desert Salt Flats, Afar region, Ethiopia. The same region that houses the Afar Depression also contains salt flats where the ground is not ground. It is a thin crust of salt over pockets of brine and volcanic gases. Step in the wrong place and the surface gives way. What lies beneath is not solid. It is superheated brine, sulfuric mud, and gas pockets that vent without warning. The temperature during the day makes it difficult to distinguish solid ground from mirage. Local Afar people mine salt here, cutting blocks from the flats by hand, but they know the terrain. They know which sections are stable. Tourists do not. There are no marked paths, no signs, no barriers. The ground looks uniform until it is not. In 2007, 5 tourists and their guides were attacked by armed groups in this region, but that is human violence, not geological. The land itself offers a slower threat. Dehydration occurs faster here than almost anywhere else on Earth. The combination of extreme heat, reflective salt crust, and lack of shade means your body loses water faster than you can replace it. Even with preparation, the environment is hostile. There are no rescue services nearby. The nearest hospital is hours away over unpaved roads. If the ground does not kill you, the isolation will. At least the Danakil Desert gives you a warning, the next place does not. Number 7. The Tsingy de Bimaraha, Melaky region, Madagascar. The word Tsingy comes from the Malagasy phrase meaning where one cannot walk barefoot. That is not metaphor. The Tsingy de Bimaraha is a forest of limestone needles, razor-sharp pinnacles formed by millions of years of erosion. The stone is not smooth. It is jagged, brittle, and sharper than most blades. Fall here and the rock does not bruise, it cuts deep. The formations stretch across 1,500 square kilometers. Some pinnacles rise over 70 meters. The gaps between them are narrow, unstable, and often lead to sheer drops into canyons below. There are no trails in many sections. Visitors who explore the park use fixed cables and harnesses. Without them, crossing the Tsingy is a method of ensuring injury. The stone breaks skin through fabric. Climbers report that even with gloves and boots, cuts are inevitable. The rock formations are so dense that entire ecosystems exist within the canyons below, isolated from the surrounding forest. Researchers have found species of lemurs, birds, and reptiles that exist nowhere else on Earth. Trapped by the stone barriers, the Tsingy de Bimaraha was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1990 not for safety but for biodiversity and geological significance. The Malagasy government restricts access to certain areas. Guides are mandatory. Even with precautions, injuries are common. One wrong step and the ground does not catch you, it opens you. The next place does not cut you, it cooks you from the inside. Number 6. The Kivu Lakebed, Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo. Lake Kivu is one of the African Great Lakes. It sits on the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is deep, over 480 meters at its lowest point, and it is beautiful. It is also one of 3 lakes on Earth confirmed to undergo limnic eruptions. Beneath the surface, dissolved in the deep water, are an estimated 256 cubic kilometers of carbon dioxide and 65 cubic kilometers of methane. These gases are held in solution by the pressure of the water above them. If that pressure is disturbed, the gases can erupt to the surface in a massive, sudden release. When that happens, the carbon dioxide, which is heavier than air, flows down the surrounding slopes and suffocates every living thing in its path. It has happened before. In 1986, Lake Nyos in Cameroon released a cloud of carbon dioxide that killed 1,746 people and over 3,500 livestock in a single night. Victims were found in their homes in their beds with no wounds, no signs of struggle. They suffocated in their sleep. Lake Kivu holds far more gas than Lake Nyos ever did. Scientists from the University of Michigan and Satraps have been monitoring the lake since the early 2000s. The gas concentrations are increasing. Volcanic activity beneath the lake adds heat, which destabilizes the layers of water that keep the gases dissolved. The region is seismically active. An earthquake, a landslide, or a volcanic eruption could trigger a release. Over 2 million people live on the shores of Lake Kivu. There is no evacuation plan that could move them fast enough. Rwanda has begun extracting methane from the lake for energy production, which some scientists believe may reduce the risk by lowering gas concentrations. Others warn that poorly managed extraction could trigger the very event it is meant to prevent. The lake is calm. The threat is under the surface. The next place hides nothing. You can see exactly what is going to kill you. If you are still here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The rest of this list does not get safer. A valley that boils animals alive. Mud that swallows you whole, geysers that spray acid, quicksand fields that have taken trucks, and the place at number 1 where the ground has killed more people than any other natural location in recorded history. Number 5. The Boiling River, Mayanteacu, Peruvian Amazon. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon there is a river that should not exist. It is called Shanadempishka, which means boiled with the heat of the sun. The river runs for over 6 kilometers and its temperature averages 86 degrees Celsius. In some sections it reaches boiling point. There are no volcanoes nearby, no geothermal vents that would explain the heat. The river is an anomaly. Geoscientist Andrés Russo spent years studying the river and confirmed that the heat comes from fault-fed hot springs deep beneath the forest. Rainwater seeps down through cracks in the Earth's crust, is heated by geothermal energy and resurfaces as superheated groundwater that feeds the river. Animals that fall into the river do not survive. Andrés Russo documented finding the boiled remains of birds, reptiles, and small mammals along the banks. The eyes cook first, then the body. The local Ashaninka people consider the river sacred and have known about it for generations. Shamans use the site for ritual, but they do not enter the water. The river is not protected by any national park boundary. It sits on private land. For years, access was restricted, but illegal logging and development pressures have increased. Russo has worked to document the site and advocate for its protection. The heat is not the only danger. The surrounding rainforest is dense, remote, and difficult to navigate. There are no marked paths, no nearby settlements. If you are injured, help is days away. The river itself is beautiful. The water is clear, blue-green, and lined with steam. It looks inviting until you understand what it will do to you. At least the boiling river stays in one place. The next place moves. Number 4. The Danakil Geothermal Springs, Dalal, Ethiopia. Within the Afar Depression lies Dalal, a hydrothermal field unlike any other. It is a landscape of acid pools, salt formations, and geysers that erupt without warning. The ground is not stable. It is a thin crust over boiling brine and sulfuric acid. The pools here are not water. They are concentrated solutions of salt, sulfur, chlorine, and iron. The colors are surreal: neon yellow, rust orange, deep green. The pH levels in some pools measure below 0. That is more acidic than battery acid. Touch the water and your skin begins to break down immediately. The geysers do not spray water, they spray brine heated to over 100 degrees Celsius. Stand too close and you are scalded. Breathe near the vents and you are inhaling hydrogen sulfide and chlorine gas. The air itself is toxic. Researchers from the University of Colorado and the Instituto Nacional de Técnica Aeroespacial have studied the site because the conditions resemble what scientists believe early Earth or even extraterrestrial environments might look like. Some pools contain microbial life, extremophiles that survive in acid and heat that would destroy most known organisms. But many pools contain nothing. They are sterile, too hostile even for bacteria. There are no plants, no insects, no animals. The ground is crusted with salt and sulfur deposits that crack under your weight. Step through and you are standing in acid. The heat is constant. The smell is overwhelming. Visitors require guides and armed escorts not because of wildlife but because the region is so isolated that rescue is not guaranteed. The Ethiopian government has restricted access to parts of the site but enforcement is limited. People still go, some do not come back. At least Dalal warns you with color and smell. The next place looks like mud. Number 3. The quicksand fields of the Mont Saint-Michel Bay, Normandy, France. Mont Saint-Michel sits on a tidal island off the coast of Normandy. The bay surrounding it is famous for having some of the highest tidal variations in Europe. The difference between high and low tide can exceed 14 meters. When the tide goes out, it exposes vast stretches of sand. That sand is not stable. Beneath the surface are pockets of quicksand, patches of waterlogged sand that cannot support weight. Step into one and you sink. Quicksand does not work the way it does in movies. You do not disappear in seconds, you sink slowly. The more you struggle, the deeper you go. The sand is denser than water, so you will not sink completely under, but you will sink to your waist, your chest, and then you stop moving. And then the tide comes back. The bay has the fastest rising tide in Europe. In some areas, the water returns faster than a person can run. If you are stuck in quicksand when the tide turns, you drown. Every year, people are caught. Some are rescued by guides who know the bay. Others are not. In 2010, a woman walking across the bay became trapped in quicksand. Emergency responders attempted to pull her out, but the suction was too strong. They could not free her before the tide returned. She drowned in front of them. The bay has been the site of dozens of similar deaths over the past century. Local guides offer crossings and warn visitors never to walk the bay alone. The quicksand is not marked. It does not look different from the surrounding sand. You only know it is there when you are already in it. The French government has installed warning signs, but the bay is vast and the sands shift with every tide. What was safe yesterday is a trap today. At least Mont Saint-Michel gives you hours to realize the danger. The next place gives you seconds. Number 2. The Yellowstone Geothermal Features, Wyoming, United States. Yellowstone National Park is home to over 10,000 geothermal features. Hot springs, geysers, fumaroles, mud pots. The ground here is thin. Beneath it is the Yellowstone Caldera, a supervolcano with a magma chamber that sits as close as 3 kilometers below the surface in some areas. The heat from that magma drives the hydrothermal system. Water seeps down, is superheated, and returns to the surface as boiling springs and geysers. The water in many of these features exceeds 93 degrees Celsius. Some pools are even hotter. The ground around them is fragile. It is a thin crust over boiling water and steam. Step off the boardwalk and you can break through. In 2016, a 23-year-old man left the designated path near Norris Geyser Basin to get a closer look at a hot spring. He slipped and fell in. The water was so hot and acidic that by the time park rangers arrived, his body had dissolved. There was nothing left to recover. It is not the only death. Since Yellowstone became a national park in 1872, at least 22 people have died in thermal features. Some were accidental. Others were people who ignored signs and barriers. The pools do not look dangerous. Many are brilliantly colored, lined with thermophilic bacteria that create rings of orange, yellow, green, and blue. They look like paintings. The colors are a warning. The bacteria thrive in extreme heat and acid. Where they grow, humans cannot survive. The Park Service has installed boardwalks, signs, and barriers, but every year visitors leave the paths. Some are injured, some die. The National Park Service has documented over 20 serious thermal injuries in the past 2 decades. The ground at Yellowstone is not solid. It is a skin over a furnace, and it will not hold you. But even Yellowstone, with all its heat and acid, is not the deadliest place where the ground itself kills. The place at number 1 is Number 1. The Flood Basalt Plateaus and Fissure Vents, Laki and Eldja, Iceland. In 1783, a fissure opened in the ground in southern Iceland. It was 25 kilometers long. It was called Laki. Over the next 8 months, the fissure erupted, releasing an estimated 14 cubic kilometers of basaltic lava and 120 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. The lava did not kill many people directly. The gas did. The sulfur dioxide mixed with atmospheric moisture and fell as acid rain. It poisoned the water. It poisoned the grass. Livestock began to die. 50% of Iceland's cattle died. 79% of the sheep. The horses died. The fish populations collapsed. The Icelandic population was around 50,000 at the time. Over the next 2 years, famine killed approximately 10,000 people. That is 20% of the entire nation. But the effects were not limited to Iceland. The sulfur dioxide created a sulfuric aerosol haze that spread across the northern hemisphere. Temperatures dropped. Crops failed across Europe. In France, the winters of 1784 and 1785 were brutal. Bread prices skyrocketed. Some historians believe the famine caused by the Laki eruption was one of the contributing factors to the social unrest that led to the French Revolution. In Egypt, the Nile flow dropped, causing famine. In Japan, the Tenmei famine killed tens of thousands. Total global death toll attributed to the Laki eruption is estimated to be over 6 million people. 6 million, caused by a crack in the ground in Iceland. The eruption was not explosive, it was effusive, lava fountains and gas release. The ground simply opened and poured poison into the air for 8 months, and Laki was not the first. In the year 934, the Eldgjá fissure erupted in Iceland. It released even more lava than Laki, though records from that time are limited. Icelandic sagas describe the sky turning dark and crops failing. Global temperature records from tree rings and ice cores confirm a sharp cooling event that coincides with the eruption. Fissure eruptions are not rare in Iceland. The island sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates are pulling apart. Magma rises to fill the gap. The ground in Iceland is always shifting, always cracking, always ready to open again. The Icelandic Meteorological Office monitors seismic activity constantly. They know another Laki-scale eruption will happen. They do not know when. It could be tomorrow, it could be in 500 years, but it will happen, and when it does, the ground will not explode. It will quietly release enough poison to alter the climate and kill millions of people who will never see Iceland, never stand on the fissure, never know what opened beneath the earth to take their harvest and their lives. That is the place where the ground itself has killed more people than anywhere else on Earth. Not a volcano, not a disaster zone, just a crack in the ground that would not stop bleeding gas. 10 places, 8 countries, geothermal vents that boil you alive, acid pools that dissolve your skin, lakes that suffocate entire villages in their sleep, stone forests that shred you if you fall, rivers that cook animals whole, quicksand bays that drown you when the tide returns, and a fissure in Iceland that killed 6 million people without ever leaving the island. The ground is not neutral, it is not stable, and in these places it is not trying to keep you alive. Which place was the most hostile to you? Tell us in the comments. The next video takes you to places that should not exist at all, but they do, and people live there. Thanks for sticking with us through the deadliest places on Earth. If you made it this far, you have a stronger stomach than most. These are not theoretical dangers. They are not exaggerated for entertainment. Every death we mentioned, every injury, every warning sign exists because people underestimated what the ground beneath their feet was capable of doing. The common thread through all of these places is the same. Human beings operate under the assumption that Earth is stable. We walk on solid ground. We trust the foundation. We assume that when we step somewhere, it will support us. These 10 locations shatter that assumption entirely. They reveal that stability is a luxury, not a guarantee. The ground can be acid, it can be quicksand, it can release poison into the atmosphere, it can cook you alive, it can swallow you whole, and worst of all, many of these places are beautiful. They are visually stunning. The colors at Dalal are unlike anything else on the planet. The crystals at Neka are among the most extraordinary formations ever discovered. The boiling river is surrounded by pristine rainforest. Mont Saint-Michel overlooks one of Europe's most picturesque coastlines. Yellowstone attracts nearly 4 million visitors every year because it is genuinely spectacular. The danger is not always obvious. It hides behind beauty. It conceals itself in color and wonder and natural majesty. That is what makes these places so dangerous. People see them and want to experience them. They want to touch the pools, cross the bay, get closer to the geysers. They want to see for themselves, and sometimes they do not get to leave. This is why guides exist. This is why warning signs exist. This is why boardwalks and barriers and restricted zones exist. They are not there to spoil your experience. They are there because the ground in these places has already claimed lives. The barriers are memorials written in safety protocol. Every fence is a reminder that someone before you did not survive ignoring it. When you visit dangerous places, when you stand near geothermal features or acid pools or quicksand bays, you are not just testing yourself. You are stepping into a space where nature has already proven it does not care about human survival. The ground does not negotiate, it does not warn in advance, it does not give you a second chance. You either respect it or it takes you. That respect is the only thing that keeps you alive. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more about how our planet can betray us, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. We have dozens of other countdown videos coming, each one revealing something darker, something stranger, something more impossible about the world we live on. The next video explores places that should not exist at all, floating islands that drift across entire continents, underwater forests that flourish in complete darkness, mountains made entirely of salt, valleys filled with perpetual fire, places that science struggled to explain until we looked closer, places that redefine what we thought was possible on Earth. Hit that subscribe button now so you are there when we release it. Thanks for watching and be careful where you walk.